The Universal Tech Units podcast is an official tech podcast made by Speed and Green, with the voice made from Google's Notebook LM. Do not reproduce our podcast without permissions from the owner. Think about the device you're listening to right now, right? Like, for the last couple of decades, we have all collectively agreed on what a web browser actually is.
Totally. It's basically a given.
Yeah, it's essentially just a glass window. I mean, you type in a URL, the glass clears, and you look through it at a website. And if you want to look at something else, you just open another window or another tab.
Right, but the relationship there is completely passive.
Exactly. You are the one doing all the navigating and, all the reading and all the synthesizing in your head.
That is the perfect way to frame it, actually.
Yeah.
Because historically, the browser has just been a really sophisticated document viewer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes the code someone else wrote, the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and it just renders it so your human eyes can read it.
It doesn't understand anything it's showing you.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't comprehend what you're reading. It literally just displays it.
But the mission of our deep dive today is to explore how that fundamental nature of browsing is just being completely ripped up and rewritten.
It's a massive shift.
It really is. We are looking at this huge architectural shift where Google is basically turning Chrome into an active operating system that literally thinks alongside you. We're unpacking this whole new Gemini in Chrome integration.
And there's so much to cover here.
So much. To understand this, we've been digging through, official engineering blogs. We're tracking the recent Asia-Pacific expansion news. And perhaps most interestingly, we are analyzing the real-world behavior of power users on Reddit who are pushing this tech way beyond its intended limits. Welcome to the Universal Tech Units podcast.
It is just a phenomenal topic to explore because the scale of the pivot Google is making here, it's pretty much unprecedented.
Yeah.
They are not simply adding like a new bookmark that links out to a chatbot.
Right, it's not a widget.
Exactly. They aren't just slapping a superficial widget onto the browser. They are re-engineering the very core of Chrome from the inside out to make it fundamentally agentic.
Agentic, meaning like it can act on your behalf.
Yes, exactly.
Because at first glance, if you just see a screenshot of this thing, you might look at the new Gemini side panel in Chrome and think, okay, so what? I have been opening separate tabs for ChatGPT or Claude for years now.
Yeah, or people say, I already have an extension for that.
Right, like I have a third-party extension that puts a little AI chat box on my screen. But to really grasp where the internet is heading, we need to understand the actual anatomy of a native AI copilot. We have to look at why a built-in sidebar engineered by the browser maker itself is vastly different from some extension you download from a web store.
That technical distinction is just everything. So let's start with how the AI actually sees the web page you are looking at. Over the past year or two, if you used a standard third-party AI extension to, say, summarize a long article or pull data from a table, that extension had to use aggressive scripts to essentially scrape the text off your screen.
Which is super messy, right?
Oh, it's a highly error-prone process. It constantly struggles with complex formatting or drop-down menus, interactive charts, nested tables, all of it.
It's like an outsider looking in. If you think about it, using a standalone web AI is kind of like a tourist standing on a street corner looking at a folded paper map and trying desperately to match those two-dimensional shapes to the giant three-dimensional buildings around them.
Yeah, they're just guessing.
Exactly. But from reading through the engineering breakdowns, this native Chrome sidebar, the Gemini in Chrome, it operates entirely differently. It's more like a local guide who has lived in that exact neighborhood their entire life and instinctively knows every alleyway and shortcut.
That analogy hits the nail on the head because Gemini in Chrome is built directly into the browser's underlying rendering pipeline. It doesn't need to take a blurry screenshot or, scrape surface-level text. It has native, unfiltered access to the document object model, right, the DOM. And the DOM is the raw structural blueprint of the website. It dictates exactly how every headline, paragraph, image, and data point relates to one another. So the AI reads that structural blueprint in real time.
Which honestly explains some of the wild reports we are seeing from users right now. People are navigating to incredibly complex, notoriously poorly formatted government regulatory
Oh
websites.
yeah, the worst ones.
Yeah, the kind of sites with endless tables and broken layouts from like 2004, and the AI just handles it flawlessly. You don't even need to use your mouse to highlight the text you want to look at. The AI simply sees the underlying structure exactly as the browser's engine does.
Exactly. It completely bypasses the visual presentation and reads the pure data structure. But having perfect eyes is really only half the equation here. The other half is the brain. And this leads us to perhaps the most significant hardware shift in modern computing.
Okay, let's get into the hardware.
So historically, we've always assumed that whenever an AI is doing heavy listening, like summarizing a 50-page document or generating complex code, that processing is happening in some massive liquid-cooled server farm hundreds of miles away in the cloud.
Right, which usually means a slight delay. I mean, you hit enter, you wait a second or two, and then the text streams in. But the data coming out of the developer community highlights this concept of zero latency local inference. And I was really trying to wrap my head around this because traditionally, trying to run a massive language model locally on a laptop turns the machine into a space heater.
Yeah, and drains the battery in about 20 minutes.
Exactly, yet they're pulling this off right inside the browser.
They are, and the way they're achieving it is just a masterclass in hardware and software synergy. It really comes down to modern architecture, specifically the new wave of ARM64 devices like laptops running the Snapdragon X Elite processors. On these specific machines, Chrome is not sending every single one of your sidebar queries up to a Google server in the cloud. Instead, it utilizes a smaller, incredibly dense, and highly optimized AI model called Gemini Nano, and it runs that model entirely locally, directly on your physical machine.
Wait, so it's bypassing the main central processing unit, the CPU, entirely?
Well, not entirely, but it is offloading the heavy AI math to a specialized component. Google is using their LitterPOI framework, which is a lightweight runtime environment, to act as a direct bridge to the laptop's Hexagon NPU.
The neural processing unit.
Right. To make this accessible, think of your laptop's standard CPU as a brilliant general contractor. A general contractor can build a house, lay plumbing, wire electricity, paint the wall. They do everything pretty well. But an NPU is like a master painter.
Yeah.
It only does one thing, but it does it with astonishing speed and efficiency.
Oh, that makes sense.
So by tapping directly into that NPU, tasks like summarizing an article or translating a block of text happen instantly. There's zero network latency because your data literally never leaves your desk.
That drastically changes the user experience. I mean, if there is no latency, it stops feeling like you are submitting a request to a computer, and it starts feeling like an extension of your own thought process.
Yeah, it keeps you in a flow state.
Exactly. And because this intelligence lives directly inside the browser's framework, it brings in this concept of multi-tab awareness. Because, if you have ever researched a complex topic, you know the pain of having 10 different tabs open, trying to synthesize conflicting information in your head.
It's the worst.
But now, the AI treats your entire multi-tab session as a single, unified context window. You can simply ask the sidebar, hey, compare the arguments being made in tabs 2, 4, and 5, and it just does it natively.
It connects those disparate dots seamlessly. But the capability extends even further into your private life with a feature they're calling personal intelligence.
Which is huge.
Yeah, because Chrome is fundamentally a Google product, right? It's integrated deeply into their broader ecosystem, so it can securely bridge the gap between the public internet you are browsing and your private encrypted data.
I want to build out a scenario for this because blending the public web with private files is exactly where people usually get incredibly nervous about privacy.
Rightifiably so.
Right. So let's say you're at work. You are on a live public web page looking at pricing tiers for a new piece of enterprise software. Traditionally, if you wanted AI to help you figure out if you could afford it, you would have to download your company's budget PDF, open a new browser tab, log into an AI chatbot, upload the PDF, and then manually copy-paste the URL of the software website.
Which is a massive amount of friction.
Massive. But with personal intelligence built into Chrome, you just stay on that software pricing page, open the sidebar, and type, does this top-tier plan fit within the Q3 budget requirements outlined in the PDF my boss sent me yesterday?
Just crazy to think about.
And the browser inherently knows how to securely reach into your Google Drive or your Gmail, find that specific file, and cross-reference it with the live website in front of you.
And the key here is it does all of that while maintaining the integrity of the privacy sandbox. Your private company PDF does not get uploaded to a public language model, and it doesn't leave your secure Google Workspace environment.
Oh, because of the local processing?
Yes, the
Huh.
local integration we just talked about, the MPU processing, is what makes this secure. The local brain processes the private data alongside the public data right there on your machine.
Okay, so if we take a step back, we have an AI that sees perfectly through the DOM, it thinks instantly using the local NPU, and it understands your exact context through multi-tab awareness and drive integration. It is pretty obvious that the next evolutionary step is moving beyond just answering questions. If it knows all of this, it should be able to actually execute tasks.
Precisely. We are moving firmly into the territory of agentic browsing. The browser stops being a tool and becomes a lightweight digital employee. And Google is facilitating this by rolling out a feature called Skills.
Skills. Okay.
Now, the idea is to turn your complex, multi-step prompts into permanently reusable workflows.
Right, because right now, power users often just have a messy Word document or like a notepad file filled with their favorite highly tuned AI prompts, and they just copy and paste them over and over again.
Which is highly inefficient.
Yeah.
But with Skills, you construct that complex prompt once and save it directly into the Chrome sidebar as a customized tool. Let's look at the workflow of, say, an SEO marketer.
Okay.
They might regularly need to analyze a client's website against 3 top competitors. They could build a skill that tells the AI, read the open tabs, extract all title tags, meta descriptions, and keyword densities, compare the client site to the competitors, and generate a formatted table highlighting our weak points.
Oh.
And they save that as a single skill button. So the next time they have 4 websites open, they don't type anything, they just click that one button and the browser does the entire analysis in seconds.
That is automation at a micro level. I mean, that's saving hundreds of clicks a day. But Skills still requires a human to pull the trigger. You still have to open the tabs and you have to click the button. Where this technology crosses the Rubicon into, like actual science fiction, is the experimental feature currently rolling out in preview for US subscribers on the Google AI Pro and Ultra plans. They call it Auto Browse.
Auto Browse is the ultimate expression of an agentic internet. It is designed to take a high-level command and independently navigate the web to execute it.
Independently navigate?
Yeah, you aren't giving it a prompt, you're giving it a mission. You can instruct the sidebar that you want to buy a specific type of ergonomic office chair under a certain price. The Auto Browse agent will independently open hidden tabs, search across multiple retailers, compare prices, read the reviews to ensure it meets your criteria.
It reads the reviews.
Yes, it adds the best option to a shopping cart, scours the internet for active discount codes, applies them, and physically fills out your shipping information.
It essentially takes complete control of the steering wheel. And the capability goes beyond just retail shopping. It can handle dynamic booking systems like hunting down flights or putting together a hotel itinerary while staying strictly under a defined budget. But I really have to pause and push back on this specific application.
Okay, what's the concern?
When you look at the human element of this, do people actually want a machine booking their vacations for them? Because for me, and I think for a lot of our listeners, the research phase of a trip isn't just a chore to be automated away. I genuinely enjoy the rabbit hole.
The joy of discovery.
Exactly. I want to look at the photos of the hotel pool to see if it gets afternoon sun. I want to weigh the annoyance of a 3-hour flight layover against saving $50. I love zooming in on the map to see if there is some weird local coffee shop near the Airbnb. If I just type, book me a beach vacation for under $1,000 and surrender all of that control to an AI agent, I am losing the entire experience of anticipation and discovery. It feels like hyper-efficiency is actually destroying a uniquely human pleasure.
You know, that is a deeply philosophical critique of automation, and it is entirely valid. We are so obsessed with eliminating friction, but we often forget that some friction is actually fun.
Right.
Automation is undeniably incredible for fatiguing, repetitive tasks like filling out a 20-page insurance form or trying 10 different expired promo codes at checkout. But when the task involves personal preference, aesthetic judgment, or emotional discovery, replacing yourself with an agent feels pretty hollow.
Yeah.
And Google is clearly aware of this tension. The documentation notes that Auto Browse is specifically designed with hard stops. It will pause and explicitly ask for human confirmation before executing any irreversible or sensitive actions like actually charging your credit card or posting a public comment on your behalf.
Okay, well, that's good.
But navigating the psychological friction of giving up that hunting phase, will be a major cultural adjustment.
It really will be. It's the stark difference between having an assistant who takes your car to the mechanic, which is great, versus an assistant who goes to a music festival for you and just texts you the pictures.
That's a great way to put it.
But this integration isn't strictly limited to spreadsheets, workflows, and automated checkouts, is it? There is a surprisingly robust creative element embedded in this sidebar as well.
Absolutely. The integration also includes Nano Banana 2.
Still getting used to that name.
I know, it's quite the name.
Ah,
But Nano Banana 2 is Google's incredibly fast AI image generator built on top of the Gemini 3.1 Flash model.
yeah.
What makes this significant is the placement.
Right.
You no longer have to disrupt your workflow to open a dedicated image generation website or boot up heavy design software. The creative tools are sitting right there next to the web page. You can generate, remix, and edit images contextually right alongside the text you're working on. It removes the boundary between consumption and creation.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and thinking, my browser definitely does not do any of this, there is a reason for that. Listening to the sheer scale of this capability, it sounds like an absolute superpower for productivity. But access to this power is heavily guarded right now. Google is keeping a very tight grip on the rollout, which is creating a massive divide between the digital haves and have-nots.
The rollout strategy has been fascinating to watch, honestly. It is highly controlled, largely due to the immense compute requirements and varying global regulations. However, as of April 20, 2026, we saw a massive shift when Google finally expanded Gemini and Chrome to the Asia-Pacific region.
The APAC expansion.
Yes, they opened up official access to 7 new countries: Australia, Indonesia, Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, and Vietnam. This brings the total up to 11 supported markets globally.
But looking closely at the details of that APAC expansion, there is a glaring omission that just kind of defies logic.
Oh, the mobile issue.
Yeah. The rollout is almost entirely restricted to desktop Chrome and iOS devices. In fact, Japan only got the desktop version. There's absolutely no mention of Android support for these new APAC markets. And if you look at regions like Indonesia and Vietnam, they are aggressively mobile-first markets completely dominated by the Android operating
It's
system.
absolutely dominated.
So launching a revolutionary AI browser feature in those countries and completely ignoring Android seems like a massive strategic error. Why would they do that?
It is a surprising gap, especially for a company that literally owns Android. But if we examine the technical architecture we discussed earlier, the reason becomes pretty clear. This sheer fragmentation of the Android ecosystem is just a nightmare for this kind of feature.
Oh, because of the different hardware.
Exactly. We're not talking about a simple app interface. This AI requires deep, native system access to the browser's DOM. It needs to tap into local NPU hardware APIs, which vary wildly across thousands of different phone models, and it needs secure pathways to local workspace data. Standardizing that level of deep systemic integration across the endless ocean of Android devices, custom OEM skins, and varying hardware capabilities is exponentially harder than building it for the relatively uniform iOS environment or standard desktop architectures.
So it's a hardware limitation masquerading as a software delay.
Pretty much.
Meanwhile, if you look over at Europe and the United Kingdom, users there are completely locked out entirely, largely due to ongoing regulatory friction. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of this whole deep dive. The Reddit community has dubbed this geofencing mechanism the geofence ghost. And because power users in Europe and the UK are so desperate to get their hands on these agentic tools, they are engaging in this high-stakes game of digital cat and mouse to force the browser to give them access.
The technical lengths everyday users are going to bypass these restrictions are genuinely astounding. The issue stems from how aggressively Chrome enforces regional compliance. Normally, to bypass a geo-block, you just turn on a VPN and spoof a US IP address.
Sure, people do that all the time for streaming.
Right, and initially that might work. But the moment your internet connection flickers or your VPN drops for even a microsecond, Chrome instantly detects your real non-US IP address. When that happens, it doesn't just pop up a polite warning saying, this feature is unavailable in your region.
It acts like a ghost.
Yes, it completely and permanently deletes the entire AI innovations menu from your browser settings.
The user interface just vanishes. And the crazy part is, you can't just turn your VPN back on and refresh the page. You are completely locked out.
Exactly, because Chrome takes that momentary IP slip and caches your restricted status deep inside a persistent local application file. The browser permanently remembers that it caught you in Europe, Restarting the app, clearing your cookies, or rebooting the VPN does absolutely nothing.
So how are users fighting back against this ghost? Because from what I read, it's not a simple toggle switch. It requires what is essentially a surgical strike on Chrome's foundational code.
It is effectively reverse engineering the browser's state checks.
Yeah.
First, a user has to navigate into Chrome's experimental backend, the Chrome Flags menu. Here, they have to manually search for and enable every single flag related to the Glick engine.
Glick.
Yeah, Glick is Google's internal developer code name for this new AI sidebar architecture. So users are flipping hidden switches for things like Glick Side Panel and Glick Actor.
But flipping those flags doesn't bring the ghost back, right? It's just step one.
Right, it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
After arming those flags, the user has to completely kill every active Chrome background process in their task manager. Then they have to dig deep into their operating system's hidden system folders, the app data on Windows or the hidden library on Mac. They navigate into the raw Chrome user data directory and locate a very specific undocumented file called local state.
And just to be clear for the listener, this is a file with no extension. It's not a nice text document. It is raw, unformatted application code that regular users are explicitly told never to touch because altering it can instantly corrupt your entire browser profile.
Precisely. You mess it up, your browser is dead.
Hmm.
But they are opening this local state file in a raw text editor anyway. Once inside, they use a search function to hunt down a specific string of code called variations country.
Okay.
When they find it, they delete their actual country code and hard-code it to say us. Then they have to find another specific line labeled is Glick eligible, which the browser has permanently flipped to false, and manually rewrite it to true.
Wow.
They save this fragile file, make absolutely sure their US VPN is fully active, and only then do they relaunch the browser. And if they did it perfectly, the AI Innovations menu reappears from the ether.
I just have to pause and marvel at human ingenuity here. I mean, we are not talking about professional cybersecurity engineers doing this. We are talking about everyday marketing managers, students, and researchers who are willing to literally hack their browser's local application data files, risking the destruction of their passwords and bookmarks just to get this sidebar back.
It's wild.
To me, that proves exactly how highly valued this tool has become. This isn't some flashy gimmick that people play with for 5 minutes and forget. It has become a fundamental enhancement to their daily workflow. People feel they absolutely need this native AI to remain competitive.
It speaks volumes about the trajectory of software adoption. When an agentic tool transitions from being a novelty to an indispensable extension of human capability, users will break down digital walls, risk data corruption, and rewrite source code just to keep it. The perceived utility completely overrides the friction of the workaround.
So, bringing all these incredible elements together, the fact that it perfectly reads the DOM, the zero latency processing on local NPUs, the deep multi-tab awareness, the ability to securely read your private Google Drive, and those crazy auto-browse agentic workflows. What is the ultimate destination here? How does this actually redefine our digital lives?
Well, if we synthesize everything we have discussed today, the defining takeaway is that the web browser is shedding its historical legacy. It is no longer just a passive glass window you look through. It is evolving into a persistent, deeply contextual, privacy-respecting co-pilot.
Yeah.
By successfully offloading heavy AI processing to local hardware and allowing the software to execute complex multi-step workflows on your behalf, the browser is fundamentally changing its role. It is no longer just the vehicle you use to navigate the internet. The browser is becoming the driver.
You just tell it where you want to go, and it does the navigating for you.
Exactly. And that realization leaves us with a final, rather profound and maybe slightly unsettling thought to ponder about the future of the internet itself.
Oh boy, lay it on me.
For the past 30 years, the entire architecture of the World Wide Web has been designed specifically for human eyes. We spend billions of dollars on UI and UX. We use complex CSS to build beautiful, intuitive layouts. We use big, bold images to capture attention. And we craft careful navigation menus so humans don't get lost.
We design for human psychology.
Yes, exactly. But if our browsers are becoming fully agentic, if auto-browse is capable of instantly reading a website's raw, invisible data structure via the DOM, extracting the exact pricing tier perfectly, and quietly completing the checkout process in the background, will traditional visually designed websites eventually become obsolete?
Oh, wow.
Right. If you never actually look at a hotel's beautifully designed website because your local AI agent handled the booking process directly through the code, do we even need the visual web anymore? Or will the internet eventually be stripped of its design, replaced entirely by raw, invisible data feeds meant only for machines to read and negotiate with each other?
That is an absolutely wild thought. The internet just evolving into pure, silent machine-to-machine communication while we sit back and only ever look at the summarized results in a little sidebar.
It's a very real possibility.
It really makes you wonder who the internet is actually being built for anymore. See you again in the next episode of this Tech Podcast.